Joining us here today. It's wonderful to see so many new friends and old friends, and I mean in terms of how long we've known each other. I said that once to some friends of mine, and someone said, "Who are you calling old?" So that's not what I mean. We're going to get into our subject, which is affirmations and their power to transform our lives in a way that some of the ways in which Jyotishi and Deviji have been talking about today and yesterday. But we'd like to have this class also be experiential. And so we'd like to begin our experience together with a prayer, and which in a certain way a prayer is a kind of affirmation. We'll talk about that in a little bit. The prayer that we'll do is one that Yoganandaji often led his students in. You can repeat each line of the prayer if you like. You can just listen to it in silence or repeat silently anything according to your own wish. Okay? Heavenly Father, Divine Mother, Friend, beloved God, Jesus Christ, Babaji Krishna, Lahiri Mahashaya, Swami Shri Yukteswar, beloved Guru, Paramahansa Yogananda, saints of all religions, we humbly bow to you all. Dear Masters, bless our lives. Help us to take the next step in our lives, spiritually. Bless us with your presence. Bless us with divine consciousness. Give us the power to transform our lives and lead us to freedom in God in this lifetime. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Well, you're all very intuitive because, in fact, I would like you to stand for this next part. So you tuned into that ahead of time. Actually, we're going to do something else that is partly affirmation, and that's how I can justify doing it. But we're going to need to spread out a little bit, just temporarily. You can spread. Imagine I had another arm on the other side of me. So yeah, exactly. Make a little diameter for yourself. This is for the safety of your neighbors. Okay, very good. We're going to do something called the superconscious living exercises. That these may be familiar to you, as you may have guessed from some of the chuckles over on this side. It's because they're very fun, and they are, again, the kind of experience that we're talking about. So the first one is, excuse me, the first one looks like this. And I'm going to use the microphone to talk, but then I'm going to do it without the microphone as well, so you don't all start doing the same exercise like this as me. So the first one is walking in place with vigorous motion with the affirmation, I am awake and ready. 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 Excellent. This is a very good one to do at 3 p.m. So, all right, next one looks like this. I am positive, energetic, enthusiastic. Okay, so I am positive, energetic, enthusiastic. 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 Okay, next one. I am master of my body. I am master of myself. Tapping on the arms. I am master of my body. I am master of myself. I am master of my body. I am master of myself. I am master of my body. I am master of myself. Now taking the flat of the hand, rubbing the body all over, saying, awake, rejoice, my body cells. 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 Now with both fists on the head, tapping the brain with some enthusiasm. Be glad, my brain, be wise and strong. Be glad, my brain, be wise and strong. Be glad, my brave, be wise and strong. Be glad, my brave, be wise and strong. And finally, massaging the scalp all over, moving the skin, not just rubbing the hair gently, but really moving the skin, saying something.
Awake.
Oh, thank you. Awake, my sleeping saint, wake. All right. Awake, my sleeping saint, wake. 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 Okay, very good. I could ask you how you feel, but we can see how you feel. There are a lot more eyes open, more teeth are showing, and so very good, thank you. You were very good sports. Please we see that.
So we're going to do a chant. Many of you will know it. Listen, listen, listen to my heart song. I will never forget thee. I will never forsake thee. And you'll write it there as well. It's very important, since we're talking about affirmations, which we're basically repeating a phrase, but we'll go into more deeply about how our approach should be during that time, but also for chanting as well. You know, many of us go to a regular center every week. Oh yeah, I know that chant. Door of my heart, open wide, I keep moving. And there's no consciousness behind it. And so sing for this song. Listen, listen, listen to my heart's song.
Excuse me. Just pause.
So there's the words. What we want to do is get comfortable enough with the words to not read them anymore. Then we want to comprehend. We want to know we are saying, listen, listen, listen to my heart's song. I will never forget thee. I will never forsake thee. And mean it with an open heart and love flowing through us to the divine. This is one of the ways we develop love for God, is through chanting and music. It naturally opens our heart. So let's fill the room with divine love with this chant. Let's feel as though this chant is flowing through us and the divine is flowing through us, and see if you can feel, if you can have an experience of the presence of God through this chant. Okay? Listen, listen, listen to my heart's song. Listen, listen, listen to my heart's song. I will never forget thee. I will never forsake thee. I will never forget thee. I will never forsake thee. Listen, listen, listen to my heart's song. Listen, listen, listen to my heart's song. I will never forget thee. I will never forsake thee. I will never forget thee. I will never forsake thee. Listen, listen, listen to my heart's song. Listen, listen, listen. together. Let's tense the whole body with a double inhalation. And throw the breath out. And twice more on your own. We'll just do a very brief meditation, but take the opportunity to ask Divine Mother, take us deep, very, very quickly, so that we can feel these affirmations on a deep level within when we practice them.
Well, now it feels like we can begin. Sort of consciousness has been swept clear and freshened up, and now it's in a better place, certainly speaking personally. You know, the topic of affirmations is a very deep subject. It's really central to our spiritual path in so many ways. And it may not necessarily be obvious, or maybe it is, but the point is we're engaging in affirmations all the time. Just to be clear, one way to define an affirmation, sort of practically speaking, is a word, phrase, a sentence. Even this, what we had here, I will never forget thee. Just if you had that as your affirmation, saying that to yourself, I will never forget thee, saying it to God. I mean, saying it silently to yourself. If you said, I will never forget thee, I will never forget thee, I will never forget thee. Outwardly, it's confusing to other people. So if we say it to ourselves inwardly, it's very helpful because we are directing the mind to that thought. Why is it called an affirmation? An affirmation, to affirm something, means basically to declare it as true, to support it. You know, when we affirm someone else, we're sort of encouraging them, saying, yes, you are right, you can do it. And that implies, perhaps, a need to affirm, a need to encourage, that in fact there may be some opposing thoughts. When we say, I will never forget thee, I can certainly say, I want to never forget God. I can't say that I never forget God. But that isn't actually what I'm saying. I'm saying I will never forget thee, which means two things. Not just in the future, from now on, I will never forget thee, but also I put my will behind that statement. I set as my will, I will never forget thee. You see, the word will often just means future tense in English, but we can also use it as no. I declare this to you, but most of all to myself. Because God says, look, I don't really care whether you forget me or not. I'm still here. And also, even if you forget me, I'm not going to forget you. There was a famous statement made by a Western philosopher called Nietzsche. He was a French, no, he wasn't French, he was German. And he said, God is dead. And so this was one of his big statements, one of his, well anyway, without going into it. So I saw a fun t-shirt someone had that they said, God is dead, Nietzsche. You know, it was attributed to him, and then below it said, Nietzsche is dead, God. You see, we come up with whatever it is that we do in our little minds, just like children making up toys and games and so on, but meanwhile, Divine Mother is running the whole show. And so on one level, we don't have to worry too much. These affirmations are for us, but I don't mean to say that they're just psychological. They have much more power than just working with our own minds. So, an affirmation is this kind of statement that we make repeatedly to ourselves, putting ourselves in a certain direction. And so when we choose our affirmations, it's very helpful. I will never forget thee. I will never forsake thee. Listen, listen, listen to my heart song. That's a good affirmation too. If we're going to say to God, listen to my heart song, we should try, it reminds us to make our heart song something He's going to want to listen to. You see? It's, oh yeah, I better freshen up the heart a little bit. Right now, my heart song isn't saying much of anything. And so let me open the heart in the way that Dharmini was describing. So we want to give ourselves positive affirmations. And we do this all the time, as I was saying, on the spiritual path. When we chant, as the example I was just using, that's a very important one, because we are repeating it, even out loud. And together, that can be very strengthening also. I don't know how many gatherings you can walk into and sort of say, listen, listen, listen to my heart song, and everyone says, oh, yes, It's so beautiful. I was just singing another chant of Masters. I don't know if you're in your office, this is a topic of common conversation. For most people it isn't. If in your family you compete over who has the, who can do japa the longest, saying Om Guru and so on. It's more only among our spiritual family that suddenly we find these points of connection. And when we do this together, it reminds us that actually to seek God in this world, to seek God first, is not strange. It's not unusual, and we are not alone. Even though we can say, yes, 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 no, I know, even Krishna says, and I'm with Krishna because he says seek God, and so that's fine. Still, in our other environments, which are given to strengthen us, it's not that these are drawbacks, that these are to be cried about, oh, this horrible worldly environment that I'm in. We're in to become stronger. But one of the ways in which we do become stronger is we spend a lot of energy maintaining our aura. If you're into Star Trek, it's sort of like keeping shields on maximum. And so we have to put a lot of energy saying, I stand in my truth. I stay in my spine. And these people here are debating about, which kind of atheism is the best atheism, and God bless them, and they're right. But for me, I love God. But we have to maintain some kind of a protective bubble. And Swamiji said, though we have to do this, and it's necessary, it's a shame. Because it takes a lot of energy just to kind of keep ourselves in integrity. And again, it's not wrong, it's right. But it's nice when we are among devotees, where then the energy doesn't have to keep the shields up, and we can instead direct it in more positive ways. So again, that's why it's helpful even to be in a group like this, just with other truth seekers, with other devotees of God. It's very strengthening, and so remember that too is an affirmation. You could think of it as a physical affirmation. Getting, as Dhyanaji has said often, get in the room. You can just get in the room. And that's a struggle sometimes. The bed is so comfortable and warm and all these things. But if we can get in the room, suddenly there's an uplift. And that is an affirmation, even in silence, of being together, because we know what we stand for, and we know what each one of us stands for. Of course, it doesn't mean we all agree on all aspects of everything, but in the essentials we do all agree. This is what's very helpful. Now, when we can do affirmations silently in our minds, as I was saying earlier, japa, just repeating a phrase over and over and over again. A phrase like this, I will never forget thee. You could do this all the time if you wanted to, directing the mind. When we do the superconscious living exercises, you saw they had affirmations. You notice the affirmations also were positive. I am awake and ready. Not, I'm tired, when will this stop? I'm tired, when will this stop? They're not negative affirmations. They're positive. But we moved the body along with the affirmation. Because it's very possible to say, I'm awake and ready. I'm awake and ready. With no juice behind it. We don't want to do it subconsciously. This is one challenge of doing the same thing over and over again. Again, as Dharmini was referring to with the chant, that we can just sort of go on automatic. It can be just done out of habit. And listen, saying, I will never forget thee out of habit is much better than saying other things out of habit or saying nothing at all. But still, to the extent that we can introduce more consciousness into it, then to that extent we will get more energy from it. So, when we do the superconscious living exercises, we use affirmations. When we do yoga postures, if you've done Ananda Yoga, and with each of the Hatha Yoga postures, Swami Kriyananda gave it an affirmation. Strength and courage, fill my body cells, and so on. So again, that is, you could say in that way, the affirmation helps the Hatha Yoga asana, because in that asana, you could be in a pose and think about whatever you want. You see? But when we have an affirmation, it directs the mind. It helps us to say, no, I want a positive thought to be going through my mind. And Swamiji meditated on each of the asanas and chose an affirmation, or created, I should say, an affirmation that matched the flow of energy in that pose. It wasn't just that he had a bunch of affirmations here, a bunch of asanas here, and then just started connecting them. It really does, in a subtle way, connect with that pose. Sometimes it's obvious what that is. You know, waves of energy rise up my spine. I think that's for Chakrasana, I'm not sure, but that it's kind of clear that over here this even looks like that physically, but in other cases it's subtle. And in all cases it can be dug to more subtle depths. So, even when we meditate, Hong Sa, if you use the Hong Sa method of concentration, as Master called it, which is what we teach in our introductory classes, probably you've all learned it already, and many techniques beyond. But Hong Sa is an affirmation. Hong Sa, this is called a bija mantra, which means a seed, in English, a seed mantra, meaning you just use the syllable of the word and not the full word, because the syllables have power. And so Hong Sa comes from the Sanskrit aham saha, which in English is I am he, meaning the big he, the I am Divine Mother, I am God. Not in the sense that I am actually God, but that it's sort of like Master put it another way, I am the bubble, make me the sea. But the bubble is part of the sea. You see, it's not the bubble is up there and he's saying, let me merge with something else. In fact, someone just asked him to describe sort of how the soul and God relate to each other. And he said the soul is like salt water encased in a bottle, floating in the ocean. He said the salt water in the bottle is made of the same thing as all surrounding it, but this bottle is breaking it, separating it, breaking it off. I was already getting to the punchline, which is break the bottle. So the bottle is separating it. He said that bottle is our ego. It's our ego that says, no, no, I'm not that. We all love to quote from the Vedas, thou art that. But often the mind is saying, I'm not that. I might be God, but I'm not God in that person, I can tell you that. That's a different God in there. And it's not true. But again, we are working with our minds. We say these things. We can say, well, why do affirmations at all? Yes, it gives us positive messages, but is that necessary? And as I just explained, there are so many ways in which we're doing affirmations already that, look, the masters did deem it necessary. But there are many advantages to doing affirmations. One is, affirmations are a constant reminder to us of what we're living for. A positive spiritual affirmation is a reminder of why we're on the spiritual path. Swami Kriyananda, when he wrote the book Awaken to Superconsciousness, which is, in a sense, treats all the topics of Raja Yoga. In fact, the art and science of Raja Yoga, if you're familiar with that course, is one way of teaching this entire subject. I mean, you know what I mean, covering it. You can't teach the whole thing, but covering many aspects and introducing the student, grounding the student in Raja Yoga. Awaken to Superconsciousness, it covers the same exact things, but in a completely different way. It offers a completely different approach. And he said one of the things is, when we meditate for a while, meaning months, years, we can start to forget why we're meditating. I mean, yes, 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 for God, sure. And pass the salt. You see, it's just sort of, I get into the habit of thinking, I do it because I do it, I feel calmer. And that's good. I mean, none of these things are wrong, of course. But he said we're meditating to enter into superconsciousness. What is that? Well, one simple thing, we're meditating also to feel more joy in our hearts. We're meditating to share that joy. And in order to receive that joy in meditation, we should meditate with joy. Not, is there any joy out there? I don't know, I don't feel joy right now. Well, God, if you've got some joy and want to dump it on me, go ahead. I'm here. But we'll see. Because, you know, we don't want to have this sort of, how do I feel right now? Because how we feel right now is not we. You see, who we are right now is not the full picture of who we actually are. We aren't actually going to become anything. We are going to leave aside those aspects of our ego, those things that really aren't us in the first place. In a certain way, you could describe the whole entirety of the spiritual path as a process of healing. And that makes a lot of sense, actually, because when we heal, we don't necessarily think, suppose we're injured and we want to heal, we don't say, God, make me better than I am, make me something other than I am. We say, hey, fix me, repair me, bring me back to the way I was. I didn't used to have a floppy broken arm, so do something about it so I can get back to normal. This is really what we are doing with the spiritual path. We are returning to our soul nature, which is who we really are. And you can feel that often in meditation. We can have memories of when we were children, or we can have a joy and say, gosh, I haven't felt this happy in a long time. When I was a child, before I knew about PAN numbers and GST and all these things, I was pretty happy. And so this same kind of happiness gets recaptured. In fact, Patanjali defines the entirety of enlightenment, of the spiritual path of soul awakening as smriti, which of course, as you may know, means memory. It isn't that we achieve, it isn't that we discover, it's that we remember. But this memory has to be an experience. It has to be real. We can't say, yeah, I remember, definitely. Okay, so I'm enlightened now. We have to feel it, and we have to also show it. I don't mean it's our job to show it, but if you do feel that joy, you won't be able to contain it. Swamiji said it's the nature of bliss to want to express itself, to want to share itself with others. You can't hang on to it. And this is why the saints are so attractive to us, because they're sharing this vibration. When we're with souls, like we are here in this retreat, who have been meditating for decades, with joy, we feel that. We somehow just kind of want to stand a little closer to them, just to kind of get some of that radiation, positive radiation. So, back to affirmations in their role in this, that we want to remind ourselves what we're here for. Again, to God, I will never forget thee is such a sweet way of saying it, as opposed to just sort of, I'm here for God. Well, God says, yeah, I'm here for you. In fact, I'm here. You don't have to refer to me in the third person. Master said it's very sweet to refer to God in the second person. It's so sweet, he said, that even saints who are merged with God, one with God, even they sometimes like to incarnate on earth just to enjoy an I and thou relationship. Just to have that dance once again, that partnership. It's sweet. And so that's, again, they're desiring what we are also desiring, just from a different level. But they're showing us how precious it actually is. So, another reason to do affirmations, and then we'll do some. I've just got to glance at the time here. We have a clockless room, which is very dangerous for you all, because we could go on for a long time. So, another reason to do affirmations is that we are doing them all the time, anyway. And if we're not choosing our affirmation, we get the default affirmation, or the affirmation du jour, the affirmation of the day, which often is, I'm tired, I'm hungry, I'm tired, I'm hungry. Then when you get more advanced than that, I'm tired, I'm hungry, my back hurts. I'm tired, and my back hurts, and I'm hungry. See how I change that around? You see, there's always something going on in the mind. I'm afraid about this, I'm afraid about that. Well, everything's fine, yes, but I need to be afraid about something. So give me something new to be afraid about. Okay, who's going to be president after this person, or what new law is going to come out? It'll just, So there's something going on anyway. Another way to put it is that the radio is already set on the station that the last person was listening to, and the radio is always on. So do we want to listen to this kind of message that we may not like? By default, because can you change the radio if you've been in a restaurant and saying, excuse me, it's frustrating to go to a restaurant and the music they play is something you don't like. I was at a restaurant and the people at the table next to me had solved this by bringing their own music and turning it up quite loud so they could have the music they liked. I'll end the story there. But, so, the idea is that we should choose where our mind is going, because it's going somewhere anyway. I mean, where the battle has already begun. There's no such thing as maybe I'll try affirmations for a change. We're doing it. And so to redirect the thoughts, to redirect the mind intentionally, consciously. So another thing to read, where do these thoughts come from that go automatically? From the subconscious mind. And remember that the subconscious mind really is you could think of it as a big memory vault. Every single impression that you've ever had is in the subconscious mind. This is one reason not to be afraid if you lose your memory, or if you can't quite remember something and you find like, oh my gosh, I've forgotten it, it's gone. It's not gone. It's in the subconscious mind. I'm not saying that's great news. It'll be nice to clear out the subconscious mind, but every impression is there. And for example, it can come back in dreams, it can come back suddenly in meditation, it can come back under hypnosis, which I don't recommend. Master said it's spiritually damaging to the soul, but the point, or to the person I mean. But the thing is that it's in there. And so our subconscious does not create anything, it just stores. So whatever messages we've put in it are the messages that come out. And so if we have had a pattern of saying, I'm not sure if I can do it, then the subconscious says, no, is that what we're saying? Fine. I'm not sure if I can do it. Say, no, I'm trying to be brave here, but I'm not sure if I can do it. This is what you've told me to say. And so when we do affirmations with focus, with energy, we are reprogramming the subconscious. We are filling it with new messages, and then, lo and behold, they come into the mind. One example is if you wake up in the morning and there's a chant, one of Yoganandaji's chants running in your head. You put it there, it's coming back. Or maybe Master is singing to you, I'm not sure. It could be that too. But still, if you've had that experience of a positive message coming, it could be coming from the subconscious. If it comes with deep, all-transforming energy, it's probably coming from a higher source. But still, we want to feed our minds so that it can then remind us in times of need. So for example, on your handout, and I should say if you don't have a handout, don't worry. If you can share with your neighbor if that's possible, but if not, if you've given us your email address, or if you haven't, just give it to us at the end. We can send you this in soft copy. We can also send you a recording of the class. Okay, so let's do this one. It's midway down on the page, the affirmation for calmness. We'll do just this one. And so you'll see it there. I'll read it through once so you have it there. Though the winds of difficulties howl around me, I stand forever calmly at the center of life's storms. And don't worry, if you don't have it, I'm just going to read it. It's only that long. So let's sit up straight with our backs away from the backs of the chairs, helping our spines to be straight channels for the energy. And first let's affirm in a strong voice, getting the attention of the subconscious mind. Though the winds of difficulties howl around me, I stand forever calmly. At the center of life's storms. Though the winds of difficulties howl around me, I stand forever calmly. At the center of life's storms. Now in a normal voice, but with deep concentration. Though the winds of difficulties howl around me, I stand forever calmly. At the center of life's storms. Now in a whisper, taking it directly into the subconscious mind, but again, not with low energy, but with focus, like you're telling a secret to your mind. Though the winds of difficulties howl around me, I stand forever calmly. At the center of life's storms. And now silently taking it into the superconscious mind, keeping your eyes slightly uplifted as we do in meditation, doing this silently. Though the winds of difficulties howl around me, I stand forever calmly at the center of life's storms.
Can you feel the effects of these affirmations? Just the comfort that we get when we connect with the divine. You know, many of us have been on this path a short amount of time. How many just learned Hong Sa this weekend? Anybody? So some have been on the path many, many years. Some have just begun this path, perhaps, with Hong Sa. It doesn't matter, because really no one is a beginner. You're just picking up where you left off in your last life. And timing doesn't matter either. An 80-year-old woman came to Master who had been an atheist the whole time. And he, when she left her body, he said she was freed in this lifetime. It does not matter the time of how long we're on this life. None of it matters. And those of us who have been on this path a long time even, we have learned the Hansa, we have learned the energization exercises, we've learned Om, we have learned Kriya. It's very easy to get into a pattern, a subconscious pattern with all of this. And so affirmations are kind of a nice way to press the reset button. And these patterns that we have can sometimes make us surf the superficiality of our spiritual path. We want to make sure not to surf. We want to make sure to dive as deeply as possible. The nature of Maya makes us forget continuously. That's why we come to satsangs. That's why we meet together. That's why we're together, because then someone says something like, oh yeah, God, oh yeah, God. Maya is just this force that says, forget. The world is what's real. Fear is what's real. Believe that only. This stuff you can't see, like God and the guru and all those other things, that's not real. You're not feeling anything. What do you think you're feeling? You're not getting an answer for anything. That's Maya. And it is so false. We are feeling God every moment, despite what our mind says. Whenever we meditate, beginning or aged, we're always concerned. People can get very concerned about the mind just wandering during meditation. It's such an irritation. It's always a function of how restless our heart is. So obviously the more we calm our heart, the less restless we'll be, and the less our mind will wander during meditation. But it just happens. But what we need to trust, this is the same for affirmation, is that like the sea, here's the surface of the sea. These are our thoughts. They're only on the surface. What is happening in this depth? We may not perceive it. Hopefully, the longer we meditate, the more we perceive. But certainly what we should perceive is that these thoughts on the surface are superficial. They mean nothing, just ignore them. Just ignore them. They don't matter. Because why? When we meditate, we feel better. Despite having the most restless seeming meditation we've ever had that day. What? We still felt better that day. When we didn't meditate, we didn't feel better. So something else is happening. The unseen is happening. We have to trust the unseen. The whole point of meditation is to sensitize ourselves more and more so that we perceive the unseen more and more. We want to perceive the unseen. And the more we perceive it in a real way, not just intellectually, the more we trust ourselves, the more we trust our connection to God, the more we connect, the more we do trust God, and the more we feel as though we're being listened to. We feel as though there is a divine presence that loves us. There's a divine presence that's embracing us. Divine Mother is truly there. And we want to feel that so badly. Divine Mother brings this beautiful comfort to us. Master, Yoganathaji, he brings this wonderful comfort to us all the time. So we want to, what does Master say? Get away from this body. What does he say about Maya?
This ocean of
Yeah, say it.
suffering.
Get away from this ocean of suffering and misery.
So that's just okay, accepting that Maya is always there. And Maya is always this force trying to make us forget about affirmations. Trying to make us, no, you don't have to meditate today. just making us forget. And then we do it and we think, why haven't I done this for a week? So affirmations are another thing, because I think these are one of the things that fall through the cracks when we, when you're first on the path, you try everything. Okay, great. And then not only that, Master wrote scientific healing affirmations, and Swamiji wrote affirmations for self-healing. And I'm going to do this every day, and I'm going to, wow, I'm really, and then after a few years, you kind of go, oh yeah, there's those affirmations that I could do if I wanted. Why am I in such a bad mood? And so we want to be able to shift our consciousness, and affirmations is such a wonderful way to do it, especially the way he described it so well with everything. Let's see, there was one other thing I wanted to say. Okay. When you read Master's writings, especially in scientific healing affirmations and metaphysical meditations, if you don't have those two little baby books, get them. And also Swamiji's affirmations for self-healing. Master says amazing things in scientific healing affirmations. He talks about how words are like bombs that go off and explode Maya. He's very passionate in his wording about the effects that affirmation can have on us. And so, it's so easy to just go, yeah, he said words are bombs, and then they go off. Okay, it's like, what? He said words are bombs? I mean, that's another reason to be kind to others and to watch what we say to others, because our words are bombs, and they affect everyone around us. But today is more about self-affirmation. We're doing these affirmations for ourselves. Very often we can think of great affirmations for other people. Why don't you say this affirmation and then get away from me, finally. The other thing I wanted to mention before we go into another affirmation is when Master was saying how to do affirmation, he talks about these different stages. And Dharmarajan did them. But first, when we say it loudly, with the conscious mind, it's as though we need to hear ourselves say it. I will never forget thee, I will never forsake thee. We say it aloud so that we can hear ourselves say it. And so that's the first stage. Then we're slowly, through repetition, withdrawing our senses from outside back into the spine, just like meditation does. So the more we do this, the more we can withdraw. If we had more time, we would do this with chanting. I feel chanting is a much easier way to open the heart and do this. But we can't carry our harmonium around everywhere we go, so we need to be able to do other things too. So then we slowly but surely get softer and softer. But that softer comes naturally. You repeat it, you're starting loudly, and then naturally you feel to get more soft. Not, now it's time to do a soft. Very often when we're in group satsangs or classes and we do affirmations together, we'll say, and now loud and strongly, and now a little more quietly, and now in a whisper, and now super consciously. That's the last thing that Master says. I doubt very often that when we do it 4 times, we've reached super consciousness by that 4th time. We've reached subconsciousness. Perhaps it's in our mind and it's just going around. So Master said, it's going around, it naturally becomes more soft. And then he said, and then it becomes subconscious. Meaning, the affirmation then takes a life of its own swirling around in our mind. So that's why we go from whisper to silence. And then we're just thinking the affirmation over and over. Now, the last stage is superconsciousness. Unless you're doing an affirmation for a long period of time, it's very hard to get to that superconscious state. So very often we say, well, affirmations didn't work for me. It's because we didn't try them long enough. We weren't doing it long enough to really have that effect. Let me see what time it is. Okay. So, superconsciousness, we intuitively know what that is. You know, we know it's a higher state of mind. And we've had times when we felt the presence of God. Really, you can take it as meaning in this, you're feeling the presence of God by the time you get to that last stage. You want to feel it. When it's just swirling around in the mind, that's a good step, because then he said, when it swirls around, it's creating a new groove in the brain, like a record, which not too many young people in here. Have you heard of a record before? Well, they're having a new comeback. Vinyl is having a new comeback. So, but this groove that happens, or unless you're a computer scientist, you don't know what the groove is either. So, but this groove happens in the brain, this groove of habit. And so when the affirmation swirls around in the mind like that, without us having to say what it is, it creates that new groove. Then that groove is there. When we do an affirmation for a long time, we remember, you do the affirmation, you have that connection with God in the presence of God, feeling the presence inside, and then you're at work a week later and you say, remember when I was doing that affirmation? And you can then connect with the feeling of the presence of God you felt the week earlier. Master said this is spiritualizing an affirmation. In fact, the affirmations that Swamiji and Master created were done with a higher super consciousness, which meant that in the ether, these affirmations are already there and already spiritualized. The work has been done for us. So we pick the affirmation. It's fine to make your own affirmations. Master said you can do your own, but you have to do it a lot in order to spiritualize it and finally feel the presence of God at the end of that. So we often just leave out that presence of God step. Just remember, the presence of God is that feeling we always want to have. So if we're not in it, it's a good clue, oh, time for an affirmation. So we're going to do one of Master's. We're not going to do this whole thing because it would take too long. And it would be very hard to do this whole thing with the short amount of time we have and feel any kind of answer from God. Very often Master would say God answers us. Same thing as feeling God's presence with us. So we're just going to go down to, let's see, to I am the friend of all. Is that it? I wiped away the tears and fears. Yeah, I'm just going to end it with I am the friend of all, which is, you'll see that. Maybe it's a third of it. Anyway, the whole thing is wonderful. Psychological success, we all need it. Okay, so let's all sit up in a meditative pose. And you really don't need the words because you'll be repeating after me unless you can't understand me very well. So just close your eyes. Get into a meditative position. Roll the shoulders back. Have the hands upright in the lap. Really feel, and now while we're saying it, make sure that your eyes are focused at the spiritual eye. Try not to have the eyes drop down, just like in meditation. So we're going to hear ourselves say this first. We're going to say this multiple times. When you naturally feel to go more softly, you go ahead and start saying it more softly. When you feel it. I'm not going to direct us. I'm not going to say, unless maybe after the 10th time everyone's still yelling it, then I'll say, okay, a little more inward, please. So the goal is, let's do it and try and get to a more and more inward state, okay? I will tell us maybe when to whisper it and when to no longer say it out loud. But really try and feel as though you are saying this to God. God is answering back with a big yes in this, okay? So let me just read through the affirmation first so we hear the whole part that I'm going to repeat. You don't repeat after me yet. I am brave, I am strong. Perfume of success thoughts blows in me. I am cool, I am calm. I am sweet, I am kind. I am love and sympathy. I am charming and magnetic. I am pleased with all. I wipe away the tears and fears. I have no enemy, though some think they are so. I am the friend of all. Okay? Isn't it beautiful? Everything he wrote is so precious. Okay, so repeat after me. Yes? Not hearing me anymore?
No, about the affirmation. That
Yes.
there are two versions of that affirmation.
Okay.
So the line, I have no enemy, though
Okay.
some think they are so. So in one version, that line, though some think they are so, isn't there.
Right.
Well, we're going to do this one. And actually, it just means it was edited out. So someone took it out, like, I'm going to edit Master's words. Okay, we don't need that. So I would say, hello, 1929 version. There we go, the unedited version. Okay, so in fact, if you think about it, I have no enemy, though some think they are so. That's doubly affirming. Guess what? I have no enemies. You may think I have an enemy, but I do not have an enemy. I am the friend of all, and I mean it. So this is how we're saying this. Of course, you can say it too strongly and close the heart. So we want to keep the heart open with the strength that we have, okay? So go ahead, close the eyes, meditative. Eyes are focused at the point between the eyebrows. I am brave, I am strong.
I am brave, I am strong.
Perfume of success thoughts.
Perfume of success thoughts.
Blows in me, blows in me.
Blows in me, blows in me.
I am cool, I am calm.
I am cool, I am calm.
I am sweet, I am kind.
I am sweet, I am kind.
I am love and sympathy.
I am love and sympathy.
I am charming and magnetic.
I am charming and magnetic.
I am pleased with all.
I am pleased with all.
I wipe away the tears and fears.
I wipe away the tears and fears.
I have no enemy, though some think they are so.
I have no enemy, though some think they are so.
I am the friend of all.
I am the friend of all.
I am brave, I am strong.
I am brave, I am strong.
Perfume of success thoughts blows in me, blows in me.
Perfume of success thoughts blows in me, blows in me.
I am cool, I am calm.
I am cool, I am calm.
I am sweet, I am kind.
I am sweet, I am
I
kind.
am love and sympathy.
I am love and
I am
sympathy.
charming and magnetic.
I am charming and
I
magnetic.
am pleased with all.
I am pleased with
I
all.
wipe away the tears and fears.
I wipe away the tears and
I
fears.
have no enemy, though some think they are so.
I have no enemy, though some think they are so.
I am the friend of all.
I am the friend of all.
Make sure you feel your heart when you are saying this loudly. I am brave, I am strong.
I am brave, I am strong.
Perfume of success thoughts.
Perfume of success
Blows
thoughts.
in me, blows in me.
Blows in me, blows in me.
I am cool, I am calm.
I am cool, I am calm.
I am sweet, I am kind.
I am sweet, I am
I
kind.
am love and sympathy.
I am love and
I am
sympathy.
charming and magnetic.
I am charming and
I
magnetic.
am pleased with all.
I am pleased with all.
I wipe away the tears and fears.
I wipe away the tears and
I
fears.
have no enemy, though some think they are so.
I have no enemy, though some think they are so.
I am the friend of all.
I am the friend of all.
I am brave, I am strong.
I am brave, I am strong.
Perfume of success thoughts blows in me, blows in me.
Success thoughts blows in me, blows in me.
I am cool, I am calm.
I am cool, I am calm.
I am sweet, I am kind.
I am sweet, I am
I
kind.
am love and sympathy.
I am love and
I
sympathy.
am charming and magnetic.
I am charming and
I
magnetic.
am pleased with all.
I am pleased with all.
I wipe away the tears and fears.
I wipe away the tears and fears.
I have no enemy, though some think they are so.
I have no enemy, though some think they are so.
I am the friend of all.
I am the friend of all.
I am brave, I am strong.
I am brave, I am strong.
Perfume of success thoughts blows in me, blows in me.
Perfume of success thoughts blows in me, blows in me.
I am cool, I am calm.
I am cool, I am calm.
I am sweet, I am kind.
I am sweet, I am kind.
I am love and sympathy.
I am love and sympathy.
I am charming and magnetic.
I am charming and magnetic.
I am pleased with all. I wipe away the tears and fears. I have no enemy, though some think they are so. I am the friend of all. I am brave, I am strong. Perfume of success thoughts blows in me, blows in me. I am cool, I am calm. I am sweet, I am kind. I am love and sympathy. I am charming and magnetic. I am pleased with all. I wipe away the tears and fears. I have no enemy, though some think they are so. I am the friend of all. I am brave, I am strong. Perfume of success thoughts blows in me, blows in me. I am cool, I am calm. I am sweet, I am kind. I am love and sympathy. I am charming and magnetic. I am pleased with all. I wipe away the tears and fears. I have no enemy, though some think they are so. I am the friend of all. In a whisper, I am brave, I am strong. Perfume of success thoughts blows in me, blows in me. I am calm, I am cool, I am calm. I am sweet, I am kind. I am love and sympathy. I am charming and magnetic. I am pleased with all. I wipe away the tears and fears. I have no enemy, though some think they are so. I am the friend of all. So mentally, I am brave, I am strong. Perfume of success thoughts blows in me, blows in me. I am cool, I am calm. I am sweet, I am kind. I am love and sympathy. I am charming and magnetic. I am pleased with all. I wipe away the tears and fears. I have no enemy, though some think they are so. I am the friend of all. I am brave, I am strong. Perfume of success thoughts blows in me, blows in me. I am cool, I am calm. I am sweet, I am kind. I am love and sympathy. I am charming and magnetic. I am pleased with all. I wipe away the tears and fears. I have no enemy, though some think they are so. I am the friend of all. And let's just briefly meditate before we end. With the eyes pointed at the spiritual eye, allow the energy to rise from the spine into the brain. Fill the brain with light,